And then Kristen, Kameki, Marjorie. I told you you were in stock somewhere, Marjorie.
I know, huh? Somewhere in there. Yeah. Good night, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. I'm Marjorie Bezo, and I don't know which district I'm in. I just know I live in Sacramento County. Yeah. And I was sitting at, I was sitting at home earlier watching the news, and all of a sudden, there was something on the crawl talking about, you guys are talking about this topic today. Hence the manner in which I am dressed. I threw on my rags and I ran down here because I needed and wanting to be a part of this conversation. I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say. My background is varied. I'm the mother of 7. I have 6 sons and I have a daughter. I have 4 grandbabies. I have 3 grandsons and a granddaughter. She is biracial. I have 3 biracial children. Why am I sharing this with you? Because even with that kind of diversity in my family, I'm afraid when my males step out of the house. I'm terrified that they will not make it back home. I'm afraid that they're going to be riddled with 50 bullets. I'm telling you the truth. I'm keeping it real. Why is that important? When we talk about incarceration, incarceration is a system. It's a process. It's not a singular thing having to do with being behind the 4 walls, which, by the way, I have been myself. Right here, 651 I Street, is so? I've been there. I spent 2 years unconvicted here in Sacramento County, 2 years of my life, I was there when I first came. They took me there. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was there for a few months. It was pure misery. Honestly, a lot of the testimony I've heard here tonight is on point. The officers inside of the facility have too much unreined power and control. There is a level of accountability that does not exist. They are God. They are literally God, and they act that way. It's a cultural kind of thing. It's the culture of the organization. Who are you to question? Oh, you want something, put it on a kite. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. Oh, well, ask somebody. I don't know anybody. Why would I do that? I'm locked in for 23 out of 24 hours. When I come out, I have to fight with other people to go bathe. There are people in there having, what do you call it? Fits,
seizures?
Grand mal seizures and minor, right. And you're banging and you're buzzing and the officers literally would not respond. I tell you the truth. Anyway, part of my background as well, I am the former counselor of Her Majesty's Prison for Antigua and Barbuda. That position was created for me in 2012. I was the first ever. The prison has been there, and we only have prison on island. It's been there since 1735. I'm the first. My portfolio was several-fold. I needed to move the country from a retribution to a rehabilitation model, create aftercare and reentry programs for my inmates, also training and education where they would develop not just skills that they could use within the context of confinement, but that they could use outside of their prison experience as transferable skills. Also, alternative sentencing. There was no such thing as alternative sentencing at the time. I helped to develop that program and those processes and protocols. In addition to that, right now as I stand here speaking to you, I am vice chair of a technical committee in Jamaica where we're working on first-time standards for the correctional sector in the country. That's part of the reason I wanted to come and have this conversation, but also to listen. There is a need for accountability. There is too much power in the hands of the officers. Also, I want to speak about the officers.
Marjorie, I don't want to cut you short.
Time.
Yeah, time.
I apologize, but I need to say this about the officers.
Right.
There needs to be a greater investment in their mental health and well-being, their experience within the context of that, because they're confined too. They're confined too. Thank you. There was so much more I wanted to say. I must come back.
Oh, you must come back.
Thank you. I'm Alan Ash, co-chair of the Sacramento ACLU chapter and a constituent of Supervisor Desmond in District 3. And when thinking about this jail expansion issue, I was actually reminded of a story Supervisor Desmond told us when he came to a community forum we co-hosted last year. Supervisor Desmond, you told us a story about your time some 20 years ago working the night shift as a CHP officer in Southern California and getting repeated calls about a pedestrian on the 105 freeway near Crenshaw. The man responsible for these repeated calls turned out to be experiencing mental health issues, a substance abuse problem, and homelessness. And you tried to help with the tools you had. You brought him in on a 5150 hold for the mental health issue. You brought him in on a methamphetamine arrest for the substance abuse problem. But a short time later, you got the final call that the man was killed in traffic on the 105 freeway. You ended the story by telling us it made an impression on you early in your career that the system was failing to help people experiencing mental health issues, substance abuse problems, and homelessness. What you didn't say, but what I would say from your story, is that it's the carceral system that's failing people experiencing these problems, whether it's the civil carceral system of the 5150 hold or the criminal carceral system of the methamphetamine arrest. That conclusion also matches what you're hearing from the mental health board treatment experts today, that coercion and confinement are very ineffective solutions to the problems of mental illness, substance abuse, and homelessness. But those are the exact problems people are suffering from in our jails, with the vast majority of people in there having issues with mental illness, substance abuse, homelessness, or some combination of the three. Expanding the jail just throws hundreds of millions of more dollars at the system you recognized as a failure 20 years ago. And because of your law enforcement background, you are especially immune from accusations of being soft on crime, giving you the flexibility to be smart on crime, choosing evidence-based alternatives to incarceration that also reduce crime. Spend the money on more community mental health and reentry services for those exiting the jail, and diversion programs for those who need mental health treatment before they get to the jail, or community programs for people who aren't even arrested. These solutions actually reduce crime, reduce recidivism, and so reduce crowding and facilitate better jail conditions as required by the Mays consent decree. Supervisor Desmond, when I hear you talk about these issues, it's obvious to me that your heart is in the right place, which is why I'm hoping you can get your head around the need to spend our money on the evidence-based solutions that actually help people instead of the same failed, expensive jail plan that already wasn't working when you were a CHP officer on the night shift decades ago. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next caller, please. Good morning, afternoon, evening,
Whatever time it is, Courtney.
First of all, as has been said, I'm Courtney Hansen, co-founder of Decarcerate Sacramento, and someone who has been very passionate about these issues and thinks about them, works on them daily basis for the past 12 or so years. We all want safety. We all want safe communities. We all want well-resourced communities. And today's conversation is about what responsible governance and responsible public spending looks like. The jail system here will continue to act as a revolving door that ensures crime, ensures instability, ensures poverty and unsafe communities. I speak to you as a survivor of violence, as a survivor of sexual assault, as someone from a law enforcement family, as someone with an uncle who made his living in the predatory bail bonds industry, as someone who grew up with an incarcerated aunt, as someone who grew up with an aunt who endured severe domestic violence for years before becoming incarcerated, as someone who has been incarcerated in your jail and in my home with an electronic shackle on my ankle, this is not an us versus them issue. Our county residents cannot be split into two oversimplified groups, law-abiding citizens versus jail reform advocates. And that is exactly what our sheriff's department and district attorney have spent the last week and today trying to stir up, using fear and outright misinformation to drive division into our communities for their own selfish interests. Sinking $500 million, that's the initial price tag of the lower option, into a system that does not work would be a massive failure and impose huge financial, health, and public safety costs on us for an entire generation, just like the current Maine jail. We are once again being asked to spend hundreds of millions of precious taxpayer dollars on a system that has failed us with too many unanswered questions. And for all of the talk today of law, order, and constitution, shouldn't our county be upholding the presumption of innocence? Almost 85% of people in our jails are legally innocent. And in September of this year, a federal court found our bail schedule system unconstitutional in a case called Welchin v. Sacramento. So a federal court order, another one, is expected to come down mid-December, giving us an opportunity, perhaps a requirement, to increase funding for supportive pretrial service programs like the public defenders. Supervisor Desmond, Deputy Jones, to some of your comments earlier, why would you assume more incarceration in the future? Do you similarly imagine more seats in classrooms in the future, a greater need for parks, libraries, housing, high-paying jobs for our caretakers, our teachers? Because I do, and I invite you to do so by voting against jail expansion. We cannot have both. This will tie us into one direction, and it's the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay, Kimberly.